Moving on to reports. You should have got written reports. Do you want to mention anything on yours, Barb?
Yeah, I'll just go through mine quick, and I'll answer questions about Kevin. Kevin's dad is in the hospital right now in Clarksville, and so he's not here for the meeting tonight, but I can answer questions if you've got so many things about this report. The things on my report are just about Iowa core curriculum that we're involved in. The advisory committee I serve on for IASB. Something of interest to you should be the Iowa Educators Consortium. It's in the middle of the page, and there's a lot of the departments within the school that buy through Iowa Educators or IEC, and it shows you what the savings for the district was. The biggest area of savings is through food service. About half of that $16,000 for SAC was actually through the food service department. School budget review, and you can see that our supplementary weighting reports were approved. An employer educator summit that I attended, and that's pretty relevant at this point because we start working on the Iowa core curriculum that has 21st century skills like employability skills included in it. Then I made mention of that IASB orientation to governance that I mentioned is next Wednesday night. The convention, community planning session that I attended, the first one, I didn't go to the second one. It was the last home volleyball game, parents' night. Negotiations, we've met twice, a committee of 4 of us. There are 2 from the SAC EA and 2 from Wallach Auburn, and we're working on just staff reduction language. And the second time we met last week, we actually kind of made a breakthrough with some language. If you remember in the master contract, there's classification areas, so it puts teachers into particular classified areas, like it'll say all the pre-K through 6th grade teachers are a group, and all the 7-12 counselors are a group, and all the 7-12 science teachers. So we were working on that language to have those classifications be similar. And last week we came to an agreement, at least within our committee, of what those classifications would look like in a couple of pieces of the language, and we're going to meet one more time before they take it to their people about just the rest of the staff reduction language. The major difference in the language is seniority only at SAC and job performance and seniority at Wallach Auburn. And we've agreed we're not going to touch that right now. We're going to look at all the rest of the language. So that's been very positive. Grant, if you see Pam Rust or Glennis Cook, you might congratulate them. There was a grant opportunity that came from Iowa Central Community College in the area of technology, and it had to be in department that we're teaching dual credit classes. And our other vocational areas, ag, industrial tech, FCS, and auto, have all had chances at some money through other grants that we've written. And so we asked the 2 business teachers if they'd help me write a grant, and we found out last Monday that we did get the $15,000. Our proposal was for like $14,992.82. I mean, within about $8 of the whole $15,000. So we're going to use the whole thing on software and hardware. Student discipline, you've probably heard on the news or read in the paper about 3 students from East Sac County High School, 15-year-olds who had possession and or distribution of prescription drugs. Their consequences at school were good conduct violations, and then we have a policy called 502.7. Take a look at that policy. It has to do with student discipline, but it's related to drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. And so they had suspensions on the 502.7, and then also good conduct violations. Sac County Sheriff's Department was present through all of the investigation. And we knew that there were going to be charges filed. We didn't know what the charges were going to be, and we didn't know when those charges were going to be filed. And probably the thing I feel the worst about is that getting ready for school in the morning, I heard it on the Carroll radio, and by then, it was within an hour. I had all kinds of phone calls about it. So you weren't notified about that, but I don't know what I expected. I'm not faulting anyone. It's just how the system works, I guess. But at any rate, a student had prescription drugs and sold those to 2 other students, and we were very fortunate that some kids that were riding that shuttle bus from Sac to Lakeview did the right thing and reported it to the principal, and that's how the investigation got started. So I had a board member approach me about suspension, or about expulsion of these kids from school. They're 15-year-olds. It's a very serious matter, but our policy does not state that they will be expelled on any particular number of incidents. These kids need to be in school, and they need to be attending school. And Kevin and I didn't take a lot of time thinking about the consequences. It seemed pretty clear to us that expulsion was nothing we considered because none of the three of them had had any prior serious violations at school. For students expelled in a school, public school in Iowa, they find themselves in a very difficult dilemma because another school does not have to take them as an enrollee. So we've had kids apply to come to school here before, to East Sac County or to Walleye, Auburn, or Sac. And the question we always ask when the high school kids come out, the first question honestly is, have you been expelled? Are you leaving because you've been expelled from school? And if they have been, then we can make a decision about whether we take the student or not. Generally, our practice is that we call the school district to find out what the matter was about, what the issue was. But these kids would have been out of school for a year. That's just about what would have happened. So I'm not really defending the decision not to expel. I'm explaining it to you so that if anyone would ask you about expulsion, why the decision was made for them to remain in school.
And in-school suspension would be the length of?
These kids had 3 days of in-school suspension. It was actually the first discipline violation of any one of the three of them in high school. So they had 3 days of in-school suspension. And I would say the range is from a day to 10 days. The longer they're in school suspension, and you realize this as a former teacher, the more work there is to make up, the harder it is to keep up. The place they need to be is in the classroom.
So could the student then get the materials from the teacher while the individual is?
They have to. They have to. By Iowa code, they have to. Any discipline action in a school cannot negatively affect a student. So we can't withhold the work. Now, if they don't do the work, that's something different. But the consequence cannot involve anything punitive toward their grade. They have every opportunity to take a test, to do the homework, or what they miss out on, is that classroom lecture or the classroom work that's going on with the teacher there to instruct them. That's the piece that's always missing in suspension.
When it goes over 10 days, then the board gets involved, or how does that work?
I don't think we have a policy that says that. That's where, it's special education, that's where the board often gets involved with a special ed student who has 10 days or more. Sometimes the board can get involved in that. Typically, the way the district has handled suspension is about the longest we've ever had is a 5-day in-school suspension, and then often we go to out-of-school. I'm not a big believer in out-of-school suspension because for a lot of kids that's really not a suspension at all. That's a picnic. But sometimes we found ourselves when we've got lots of kids in suspension at the same time, or if it's been something so egregious that we just say, you know what, that's an out-of-school suspension, and if they enjoy it, I guess they enjoy it. They need to be out of the building for a period of time, or something, depending upon the circumstances of the incident.
And they're sort of separated away from each other and not sort of isolated and doing their own thing in their own
Yeah.
time.
Usually one of them is in Mr. Litter's office. Just off from his office is a very small office, and a student is there, a student's in his office. We often got one in the counselor's office. We have an at-risk teacher, and she'll often take one of those students, and we put up a cubicle for them, our study carrel. They don't really eat lunch with anybody else. We escort them to the bathroom and back. It's very labor intensive. We have a room off from our library that our library associate librarian just supervises students in there, but they're separated from each other. Sometimes if we've got 3 or 4 kids in suspension at one time and someone else earns a suspension, we may even postpone that for a day or two until we can get some place for kids. But we don't have a lot of kids in suspension at the same time.